Where
Morning.
are you off to this morning?
Wick Airport.
More VIPs?
No, boffins.
The controlled power of the peaceful atom is the symbol of modern achievement. We've called the scientists, the technicians, and the engineers who are shaping our future the new men. And the world they're building has an air of new adventure. But man himself has not changed, and the adventure takes shape in a world that has not changed either. Here on the northern edge of Britain, where the North Sea meets the Atlantic, live a proud and tradition-loving people whose life has always been close to the sea and the soil. The crofts of Caithness are lonely and remote. The nearest large town is 130 miles south by road. It's a part of Scotland whose population has been halved in 100 years. But those who have stayed value an independence which they've no wish to lose. Their small communities are like islands in a sea, yet it's outposts such as these, and not the great industrial centres of Britain, which have been the first to feel the impact of the atomic age. The fishing boats still put out from Thurso harbour, where the Viking invaders once landed. They leave astern a small but thriving town which has taken history in its stride. Norsemen, clansmen, bishops, kings, and tourists bound for John O'Groats, Thurso has seen and withstood them all. But 8 miles west of Thurso, along the stubborn coast, a new invasion began. The quiet roads were suddenly alive with heavy lorries burdened with mysterious loads, and the moors were loud with the song of diesel engines. Construction gangs thrust weird shapes into the blustering Caithness sky, and it became known that here at Dounreay, a new kind of atomic power was going to be made in what they called a fast breeder reactor. Now, early in the morning and again late at night, fleets of buses carry hundreds of people from Wick, Thurso, and the outlying villages and crofts of Caithness to the strange buildings with strange names by the sea at Dounreay. Amongst those who pour through the guarded gates are many who've never seen Caithness before, the new men with the new jobs in this bewildering world of their making. Some work behind thick protective walls of lead or concrete, manipulating instruments by remote control. Hooded figures go about the countryside on mysterious errands, armed with vacuum cleaners. Men dressed like visitors from Mars add a slightly sinister touch to the hospital atmosphere of the laboratories. Life is governed by regulations which seem incongruous in what was once a world of farms and fishing boats.
Standing here in Thurso, by a river that in season is rich with salmon, it's hard to believe in the fantasy of the atom station 8 miles away. Thurso people call the Dounreay workers and their families the Atomics. They're fond of nicknames, and they're very quick to notice strangers in their midst. Even people in Wick, 20 miles away, seem different. And Caithness man regards himself as quite distinct from a Highlander, an Aberdonian, or a Lowland Scot. There's something in their grey stones, in their very bones, that resists change, but it may not be able to resist for very long against a power that's changing man's whole world.
The atmosphere of Thurso suggests the pattern of local life, a pattern which is deeply rooted and not easily disturbed. It's a town small enough for everyone to know everyone else. People live close together, children go to the same school, parents meet in the same shops and share similar interests and recreations. There's little to suggest that Thurso's population has been almost doubled by the atomics who now live here. In the modern world, Thurso goes about its business much as it's always done. So far, the march of progress has made life easier, but not changed the people in any way. But now Thursonians meet strangers in their home and wonder whether they'll want to move the furniture around. Atomic energy has brought progress of a different kind, for with it has come a flood of people whose faces would seem out of place in a local crowd like this, and who don't share in this local way of life. In the shops and stores, progress has meant merely a few more items for sale on the well-stocked shelves. The leisurely, friendly atmosphere of this ship's chandlers cannot have altered much through the years. The owner of the store, with its collection of prints and model ships, is the provost of Thurso, Mr. Sinclair.
So it wouldn't be true to say that before the atomic project came, this was a depressed area?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, by no comparison could you call it a depressed area. We've had our own industries. The atomic industry coming in has certainly made a difference.
Has it taken any of the fishermen, the manpower away from
There have
fishing?
been quite a number have left the fishing in the beginning, gone to contractors, but they're drifting back again. Because, well, after all, fishermen are fishermen, and they're used to the sea, and they can't stay away from it too long.
Well, now, you're very attached to your old ways here. Are you a bit apprehensive about the changes that are bound to come?
Well, there are certain changes which will take effect, but we want to retain, as far as possible, our local tradition. I might have put it that way. We have the new people coming in. They have got new ways and new ideas, and they are fitting in quite well indeed. We're not the type that will say, well, we're not going to adapt ourselves to new conditions, but we can work together quite harmoniously.
You don't think that you'll be swamped by the newcomers?
No, I don't think so, because the North people and Caithness people have got a way of them. Well, we wish to retain our own life, our own character, but we're quite willing to get the new people in to take an interest in local affairs. But I'd say definitely not to be swamped and to local affairs to be run by the new people.
The atmosphere of sea and ships follows one around in Thurso. In her antique shop, I talked to Miss Monroe, who took a more critical view of recent changes.
Well, is it progress? Entirely? I'm not so sure. Perhaps materially, of course it's progress. I don't think we've ever been quite so well off in our lives. Is that a good thing?
Well, is it a good thing, or do you think that this prosperity in itself is bad?
No, I don't think prosperity is bad. I'm all for it. But I think perhaps if you impose a lot of prosperity on people rather quickly, I'm not sure that I think that's a very good thing.
And do you think that anything is being lost in the process?
I think it could be very well. It's a very old county, very old town. We had a tremendous lot of history, a lot to be proud of. A lot of things happened to us long before we ever heard of atoms and things. And we could, rather easily, forget about those things and only look towards large pay packets and spending them rather rapidly.
Thurso is also a town of shopkeepers and small businessmen. Further down the street, I dropped in to see Mr. Wilson, who owns a garage. I found him busy with a tractor, one modern invention which has certainly been popular in these parts.
Oh, well, Dounreay has been a tremendous help to Thurso. It's found employment for a big number of people, and there's quite a prosperity here in Thurso and the surrounding districts. There's 2 points I should like to mention to you. I happen to be chairman of the local disablement committee under the Ministry of Labour and National Service, and we have found quite a lot of employment for disabled people at Dounreay. We have had great cooperation from the Atomic Energy Authority and the contractors there, and the people would not, I don't think, have found work otherwise had it not been for Dounreay. Further, I'm also a member of the Youth Employment Committee, and previous to Dounreay starting, we had quite a number of applicants from young people for grants to go south and start apprenticeships. Now, these people left here and never came back again. But since Dounreay started, the number of applications has dwindled down to practically nothing. So on these 2 points, I think Dounreay's been a very big help to us.
How do the two communities get on?
They get on very well. I would say that I know the children get on very well together, and they mix very well, and well, they are the people that are growing up, and well, when they get together, in time to come, the community will blend itself together, and there'll be quite a harmony, I'm sure.
Of the 1,200 pupils at the Miller Academy, a third come from atomic homes. I spoke to the rector.
Mr. Grant, you were a pupil at the academy here yourself. You must have some knowledge of former headmasters.
Yes, and they were estimable men. Men of strong character and men who had a considerable influence on the mind of the community. But of course there were exceptions. There was one schoolmaster in the middle of last century. He'd been appointed by the Kirk session, and he was dismissed, in the words of the record, because he was always drunk out of school and always asleep in it.
These more estimable ones, you say they influenced the mind of the community. What sort of mind?
Well, I'd say that the people of Thurso are very shrewd. They have a competent sense of values, of material values and of the other values of life, and they're generous. The amount of money that's collected here annually for good causes and charitable objects is remarkable, and they're independent. I think the very remoteness breeds independence. They can stand on their own feet. I would say that this is not the place for anyone who's afraid to be left alone with his or her own thoughts.
You say they're generous. Would you say in the wider sense they're generous in their attitude to strangers, to newcomers?
Oh yes, I think so. They will make incomers welcome at any time, and they would not, however, accept imported values simply because they were imported. They would judge them for themselves, and if they felt they would be to their advantage, then they would adopt them.
Do you think that these values, the Thurso values and traditions, are likely to be swamped by the newcomers?
No, I don't think so. If the incomers are prepared to become Thursonians and not a community apart, then I think the relationship between the incomers and the Thurso people will be a very happy one.
The atomic children go home from school to houses on a new estate. The 400 families who live here are the people the rector hopes will become new Thursonians. These atomics live in what is in fact a new town built behind the old. Many are not used to small town life. The newcomers have their own point of view. 3 housewives told me how they were settling down to their new life.
I think sometimes too much can be said about Thurso and the atomics being one community. I don't think it's a thing that can be forced, really. We're more like the army, who move about a lot, and the locality in which they are doesn't really ever join with them. But we all like very much to meet the Thurso people, and a great many of us join in with some of the town activities of our own accord.
We find the education is a problem when we're moving around, because when Judith came here, she'd already done a year at grammar school in England, but when she started here in the second year, she was so far behind in some of the subjects that we thought it advisable for her to start all over again.
I find shopping quite different here. In the south, you know, you have the big multiple stores and you can spend a morning wandering around the shops and seeing all the things you want to see, and you have quite a good choice of articles. Up here, well, you go to the shop, and unless you know what you're going for, well, it's a bit difficult. They can't carry the selection that you would get in big shops in the south, but they're very obliging. They'll send away for anything for you, but, well, we're just not used to shopping that way.
The building of the Dounreay experimental station took 2,000 men 3 years to complete. The site was remote from industrial and technical resources and existing centres of atomic research. This part of Scotland is nearer to Norway than it is to London. Often contractors and engineers were implementing designs for apparatus and equipment that had never been built before. It was a step into the unknown. Directed by an expert staff of atomics, men like the resident engineer, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Williams, this is a very strange landscape you've made here.
Yes, very different from what I met here 2.5 years ago, just a green field at the edge of a sea.
You're one of the very few people who can build atomic piles. How did you come to do this?
Well, I started off my early career as a mining engineer in Wales years ago. From there, I went to the Gold Coast as a geologist. I came back to this country to build a series of wartime factories, and in 1946, with the challenge of the new atomic age, I went to Harwell to build the piles there. I built the first two piles in this country, Gleep and Beppo, went from there to Windscale, then to Calder, and from there to Dounreay.
Is it very different from any other large-scale construction work?
Yes and no. It's developmental in its nature, by which I mean that we have to build as we design, and for that reason we have to embody quite a lot of modification work as we go along. It's also a job that has to be built to a high degree of precision, just like a machine which you build in a factory.
You're really building not buildings, but enormous machines in which people work.
That's right, into which we have to fit high precision equipment.
When you finish this job, what are you going to do?
Well, I shall be here for another 2 or 3 months, after which I shall leave for Winfrith Heath in Dorset, where I hope to build yet more piles.
With this background of great works, what are your ambitions for the future?
Well, I suppose I only have one further ambition now, and that is to return to Wales to build a pile.
The next atomic I spoke to was the Works General Manager, Major General Jocelyn.
Rather a different beachhead from Normandy, General.
Yes, a beachhead still, you know, a new enterprise anyway.
Yes, it has to be on the sea.
Yes, we must have it on the sea. We need a lot of sea water. In fact, we pump something like 2 million gallons an hour.
But this remoteness must have its disadvantages. For instance, you're a long way from universities or centres of technical education.
Yes, that is a problem, although of course we are developing a certain amount of technical education facilities up here.
Now, settling into a rural community like this, do you find that the enterprise fits into the pattern fairly well?
We have had a very warm and friendly reception from the local inhabitants, and I think it's fair to say that our people are mixing up very well with them, taking a share in their community activities, and in fact, in my opinion, we're all settling down very happily together.
A lot of people think this is a sort of super power station, but in fact, of course, it's an experimental project, isn't it? What do you do here?
Well, this is, of course, a large experimental station. The biggest and most important experiment is the fast breeder reactor, but we have other very important items of experimental and research plant. There is a materials testing reactor, there is the naval reactor. On top of that, we have quite a series of chemical plants and large research laboratories.
This is the central control room, the nerve center of the reactor. Here you find the people who have the actual power of the atom at their fingertips. People like Mr. Cullington, who's in charge of the control room at this moment, and who, in his spare time, is very fond of sailing.
That's right.
Mr. Cullington, what does this control panel actually control?
Well, on this side, with the liquid sodium, which flows through the core to cool it, and here, the control rod position, which governs the power of the reactor.
Where's the button that you press to switch everything off in an emergency?
This is the emergency shutdown button, which drops all the control rods out of the reactor, thus stopping the reaction.
What were you doing before you came here?
I was reading mathematics at Durham University.
I suppose you have to be a mathematician to do this job.
No, not at all, really. My job is technical operation, giving instructions for the operation of the control room and the reactor, and I'm also helping to write a reactor operational manual.
The fast breeder reactor is the most spectacular part of Dounreay. This new type of atomic pile is housed in a sphere 135 feet across and spanned by a gigantic crane. The sphere is an immense pressure vessel designed to prevent the accidental escape of fission products. The heart of the reactor and the source of its power is in a container no bigger than a dustbin. This is buried deep within a concrete shield that is packed with a complicated mass of plumbing, which is the heat exchange system. In spite of the complexity of an atomic plant, much of the work can be done by people with no special skills or training in nuclear science.
Mr. Henderson, you're a Caithness man.
Yes, I'm a Dounreay man.
You come from this district?
Yes, I was born on this farm. The atomic station is now built on.
How did that come about?
Well, my father was working here, foreman ploughman with the late Joe Miller 48 years ago.
Where's your father now?
He's retired in Dunbeath, about 52 miles from here.
Does he ever come to see the atomic station?
No, he doesn't. He would rather to remember the farm as he himself worked on it.
How about yourself? Do you like your work here?
Oh yes, the only thing is the long time we have to spend in the buses.
What is your job?
A process worker.
What does that mean?
Any kind of job that you're told to do.
I see. What do you think of the scheme as a whole?
Oh, I think the scheme is a grand thing for the north of Scotland.
Mr. Leask, you used to work for the Admiralty at Scapa Flow in Orkney.
I did, sir.
Are you an Orcadian?
Yes, sir, and my wife is also.
Yet you both left there and came and settled here to do quite a different job.
Well, I wanted a chance to secure a decent job, and as my wife likes it now, and I find the job most interesting, I'm satisfied.
James, whereabouts do you come from?
I come from Scotstour. It's a small fishing village. My parents keep the Scotstour Hotel there.
So you live right beside the sea. Do you like it?
Yes, I'm very fond of the sea. Back in the day, some sailing. I was going to go to sea before I come to Dounreay.
What made you change your mind?
Well, more prospects of a good job here.
These people are pretty positive, independent characters. Isn't it rather a pity to take a young chap like that and make him a dial watcher or a hander out of white coats?
Well, I don't really think so. If we take, for example, a man working, say, on the fast reactor, a certain period of his time would perhaps be engaged in dial watching, maybe in the control room or some such place, but he would be moved around and he would do other jobs in the reactor. We do try to give as much variety to the job as possible, and by moving him around, this maintains the interest.
There is no doubt that atomic energy has brought jobs, prosperity and security to this part of Caithness. But one problem at least remains unsolved, a problem which is more universal. As this technological age advances, is it possible for any of us to share a common language?
6, The neutron density with time as a function of the reactivity which has been put into the reactor, either by inserting a known amount of material into the center quickly or by moving a control rod through a known space, through a known distance. These two differential equations then relate the neutron density...
Is the technical lecture any more understandable to the layman than the patter of the market auctioneer?
By whatever...
How many of us know our way about the scientific jargon of our time? The language of machines, the furniture of the laboratory, or the labyrinthine ways of electronic circuits. It used to be said that ignorance was the barrier to universal understanding. Today, the barrier between men is the narrow enclosure of specialized knowledge.
It takes an inch-thick handout, 117 pages, to describe what goes on at Dounreay in the simplest terms. Simple terms like this. There are voltage systems from 11,000 volts down to 6 volts, from direct current through 50 cycles, 10,000 cycles to 100 million cycles per second. There are currents from 2,000 amps supplying power down to microamps needing valves to amplify them. There are magnetic amplifiers. Well, I can't make very much of this, but I'm with Mr. Charles Tottle, the head of research and development. Do you think ordinary people nowadays can understand what you're doing and in fact can understand you?
I think so. If the scientist is prepared not to talk down to the people, and the people are interested themselves to try and learn a little about it. Of course, we scientists are frequently regarded as demons who are plotting the destruction of the earth and everyone else in it, without any culture or appreciation of things around us beyond our work. Either that, or we're regarded as simple-minded children who have very strange language, strange habits, and even strange appearance sometimes. But really, that we are very ordinary men and women, We have the same deep feelings as anyone else, and we can appreciate beauty in colour, form and sound. Nevertheless, I think there are dangers in this expansion of science and technology, which is absolutely essential if this country is to maintain its present standards of living. I think scientists must learn to read more widely. They must not be content with their textbooks and treatises on their work, and they must go out and about and look at the sky and the sea and into the earth and see all the things that there are there and appreciate this beautifully organized complex pattern of life in general. When we are playing with our atoms and nuclei in reactors, we're really only carrying out the same operations as go on every second of every day on the face of the sun, and equally in many stars and galaxies in the universe. This, I feel, should give us a sense of humility, that we are really very small fry in this vastness of space.
When my time comes and I retire, I'm going back to Caithness to spend the evening of my days in blissful peace and quietness. I'll have a housie of my own, a garden brecht with flurags, and every room a blaze of light for Altna breaks old bourags. Some days I'll laze among my floors, and some days I'll go fishing. At night I'll stretch myself at ease aside my television. I'll simply touch a pity switch to gape at something thrilling, for they'll be running sets by then on pipes for Dalna Willing. So Godspeed to the Flachterspeed and Godspeed to the Tusker. I'll have electric razor then to shift my bit of whisker. I'm thinking too to keep a coo with electric light a beaner, and then for mucking out the buyer I'll have a vacuum cleaner.